Soldiers, the time has come to advance. Follow me, and we will secure victory. Company, attention!
August 30th, 1944. Somewhere near the Belgian border. It was pitch black. Rain was hammering against the canvas roofs of a convoy of U.S. Army trucks. These trucks were moving fast, too fast for the muddy roads. They were racing west, away from the front lines. They were heading toward a massive supply depot belonging to the U.S. First Army. The drivers were nervous. They weren't worried about German snipers. They weren't worried about landmines. They were worried about the American military police. Because these men weren't on a supply run. They were on a heist. They had removed their shoulder patches. They had painted over the Third Army symbols on their trucks. They carried forged papers. Their orders came from the very top, from General George S. Patton himself.
Soldiers, the hour of tribal chats and non-native prime person Wednesday hard resolve.
Their mission was simple. Drive to the First Army depot, pretend to be First Army drivers, load up 500,000 gallons of gasoline, and steal it. If they were caught, they would be court-martialed. Stealing supplies from your own side is a crime, but to Patton, it wasn't theft. It was survival. His tanks were sitting silent on the road to Germany. His engines were dry. Supreme Headquarters had cut him off. Eisenhower had given all the fuel to Field Marshal Montgomery. Patton refused to accept it. He famously said, "My men can eat their belts, but my tanks have got to have gas." This is the untold story of the great fuel heist of 1944, how the most famous general in America became a thief to win the war, how he deceived his own superiors, and what Eisenhower said when he found out that his supplies had vanished into the gas tanks of the Third Army. To understand why Patton had to steal, we must understand the speed of the war in August 1944. The breakout from Normandy had been spectacular. After months of grinding warfare in the hedgerows, the Allies were finally loose, and leading the charge was Patton's Third Army. They were moving faster than any army in history, 20 miles a day, 40 miles a day, sometimes 60. They liberated Paris. They crossed the Seine. They were chasing the Germans back to the Reich. But speed has a price. A modern army is a beast that eats gasoline. A Sherman tank gets about 1 mile per gallon. Patton had thousands of tanks, thousands of trucks, thousands of jeeps. Every day, the Third Army consumed 350,000 gallons of fuel just to stay moving. If they fought, they needed 450,000. The supply lines were stretching to the breaking point. The fuel was coming from the beaches in Normandy, hundreds of miles away. The Red Ball Express, a massive convoy of trucks, was running 24 hours a day to bring fuel to the front. But it wasn't enough, and then the politics interfered. On August 29th, a crisis meeting was held at Supreme Headquarters. General Dwight D. Eisenhower faced a dilemma. He had 2 racing horses, Patton in the south, Montgomery in the north. But he only had enough feed for one of them. The logistics system was collapsing. There simply wasn't enough gas to keep both armies moving at full speed. Field Marshal Montgomery demanded priority. He wanted to launch a massive strike into Belgium and Holland. Operation Market Garden. He promised Eisenhower that he could end the war with a, quote, one powerful thrust to Berlin. But he needed all the supplies. He demanded that Patton be stopped so that the British could keep moving. Eisenhower, trying to keep the alliance together, agreed. He issued the order. Priority for supplies goes to the 21st Army Group in the north. That meant Montgomery. For Patton, the news was a death sentence. He received a message from headquarters. Third Army will halt. You will receive no fuel until further notice. Patton exploded. He was standing in his headquarters near the city of Verdun. He smashed his fist onto the map. "It is a terrible mistake," he shouted. "We have the Germans on the run. They are broken. If we stop now, they will regroup. We are buying them time." He argued with General Omar Bradley. "Brad, give me 400,000 gallons. That is all I need. I can be in Germany in 2 days. I can end this war." But Bradley was helpless. "Ike has made his decision, George. The gas goes to Monty."
On August 31st, the Third Army ran dry. It was a haunting sight. Along the road to the Moselle River, miles of American tanks sat silent. Drivers sat on the hulls, smoking cigarettes, looking east. The Germans were just over the horizon, but the Americans couldn't move. Patton toured the lines. He saw his magnificent machine brought to a standstill, not by the enemy, but by a lack of paperwork. He saw German columns escaping. He saw them digging trenches on the far side of the river. He knew that every hour they sat there, the price of victory was going up in blood. Patton wrote in his diary, "To sit here and wait is murder. I will not do it." He called his chief of staff, General Hobart Gay. He called his supply officers. Patton didn't ask for a plan. He gave an order. "Get me gas. I don't care how you do it. I don't care who you have to rob. Just get it." The officers looked at each other. They knew what he meant. They weren't going to wait for a shipment. They were going to take it.
The plan was audacious, and technically it was criminal. Patton's intelligence officers had located a massive fuel depot near the rear of the U.S. First Army area. The First Army, commanded by General Courtney Hodges, had also been ordered to slow down, but they had a stockpile. Hundreds of thousands of gallons of gasoline sitting in jerry cans, waiting. Patton assembled a provisional truck company. He picked his toughest drivers. He picked officers who knew how to lie. The order was given. Remove all Third Army insignias. Remove your shoulder patches. Paint over the bumper codes. They forged requisition papers. They created fake documents claiming that the fuel was urgently needed for a Priority 1 mission authorized by Schaeff. Under the cover of rain and darkness, the convoy set out. They drove north. They passed the military police checkpoints. When asked who they were, they lied. First Army Supply, they said, moving stock to the forward dump. They reached the depot. It was guarded, but not heavily. The quartermaster in charge looked at the papers. They looked official. The officers were confident. "Load 'em up," the quartermaster said. For the next 4 hours, Patton's men loaded 500,000 gallons of gasoline onto their trucks. That is enough fuel to power an armored division for a week. They didn't stop there. They stole maps. They stole rations. They even stole spare tracks for the tanks. As dawn approached, the convoy turned around. Heavily loaded, they raced back to the Third Army sector. When they arrived at Patton's headquarters, the general was waiting. He watched the trucks roll in. He watched the jerry cans being unloaded. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. He turned to his tank commanders. "Fill them up. We move in an hour."
The next morning, General Omar Bradley visited Patton. He had come to deliver bad news. He wanted to make sure Patton understood the halt order. "George," Bradley said, "you have to stay put. You have no gas." Patton looked at him. He put on his best poker face. "Well, Brad," he said, "I have done some scouting." He didn't tell Bradley about the heist. He didn't tell him that his tanks were currently refueling with stolen gas. Instead, he played a trick. He knew that if he asked for permission to attack, Bradley would say no. But if he was already attacking, Bradley couldn't stop him. Just then, a report came in. Patton's lead tanks had engaged the enemy near the Moselle River. They weren't just scouting, they were attacking. Bradley was suspicious. "George, how are you moving? I thought you were dry." Patton shrugged. "We found some local supplies," he lied, "and my men are very efficient." Bradley knew Patton was lying. He knew Patton had probably raided every depot in France. But Bradley also wanted to win. He looked at the map. He saw Patton moving, and he decided to look the other way. "All right, George," he said, "but don't get stuck. If you get stuck, I can't bail you out." With the stolen fuel coursing through their engines, the Third Army lunged forward. They hit the Moselle River with violence. The Germans were shocked. Their intelligence had told them the Americans were out of supplies. They thought they had weeks to build defenses. Instead, Patton was at their throat. The crossing of the Moselle was brutal. But because of the speed, because Patton didn't wait, they established a bridgehead. They captured the city of Nancy. They captured Metz. Those 500,000 gallons of gasoline bought the Americans a critical foothold in Germany. But back at Supreme Headquarters, the bill was coming due. The quartermaster of the First Army realized his stock was missing. Reports started coming in about ghost trucks. The numbers didn't add up. 500,000 gallons doesn't just evaporate. The trail led straight to Patton. Years later, historians analyzed the supply crisis of 1944. Many believe that giving the fuel to Montgomery was Eisenhower's biggest mistake. Montgomery's Operation Market Garden failed disastrously. It was a bridge too far. If that fuel, the official fuel, had gone to Patton, the Third Army might have ended the war in 1944. But even with the scraps, even with what he could steal, Patton accomplished more than any other commander. There is a famous photo of Patton from this time. He is standing next to a tank. He looks tired. He looks dusty. But there is a fire in his eyes. He wasn't fighting for a pension. He wasn't fighting for a promotion. He was fighting to win. And if he had to become a thief to do it, then he would be the best thief in Europe. Patton broke every rule in the book, including the law against theft. Do you think he was right to steal supplies to keep attacking, or should he have followed orders and waited? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of the rebel general, make sure to subscribe. We have more untold stories coming soon. Thanks for watching.